Welcome to the Live Currency Podcast. I'm your host, Bob Lozano, a show that explores success, growth, and opportunity in the restaurant industry. A restaurant podcast by restaurant people, powered by F&P Media. Welcome to another episode of Live Currency, the restaurant podcast by restaurant people. Today, we're diving deep into one of the world's largest commodities, one that brings a smile to my face, and I think does the same for many. Diving deep in the world of coffee. And today I have the pleasure of sitting with Drew Dodson. Want to introduce yourself, man?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. My name is Drew Dodson. I'm currently a part of the sales team and a consultant at Roastronics. We're a coffee technology company. People are aware of us for the Stronghold Roaster, which is a next generation roaster. So we're really involved in businesses taking that journey, taking that leap of cooking their own beans. And so, there's a lot of changes in technology and we love standing alongside business owners that want to get more involved in the coffee game. And so that's what I do on my day to day.
Very cool, Drew. How much of your product or your service is vertically integrated? I mean, are you going from all the way to the farms, all the way down to storefronts, or you just play a role in? Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's like so beautiful about coffee is because you can really imagine it, right? From seed to cup. It's easy to actually, hop on a flight, to, reach out to producers, especially in this day and age. And you can actually try the coffees all the way, say in Colombia or in Panama, Guatemala, in Africa, Asia. And then you can bring it back and actually, tell that story to customers. So of course, as a business, we have some producers that we are in collaborations with. And so we do that kind of on a project basis when it makes sense. And for our customers, they can actually do the same. And so there's a lot of links in the chain of the coffee supply. They call it the value chain. But you can definitely, have a direct connection with producers, which is incredible. It's an amazing opportunity. And it has all that value of making your business international, which I think, is a dream for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, I think we'll get into all kinds of things, but I want to clarify something. So I think y'all are a distributor, but then also a retailer for the machines as well, and a service provider. Is that right? Or
Yeah, that's a great question. So we operate in the United States. Our office is in Houston, Texas. And so for many of the machines that we distribute, we are the exclusive partner in the United States. So we represent products that are manufactured, especially in Korea. But we also have Swiss products. And so, we bring in those products to the United States. We import. And then we provide the sales and service on many of those products. Yeah, so the Stronghold is the one that we're most known for, but we have other coffee technology products for cafes or coffee businesses that help create automation, create higher quality coffees, and so we really meet the customer just kind of where they're at and the journey and the product and service looks different for each case.
Mm-hmm. And then on the Roastronics side, is that the actual, you sell actual coffee beans, etc., or?
Yeah, so the way that we like to set up that relationship as a vendor of like green beans or even roasted coffee really has more to do with inviting customers into the roasting process. So we really are not a wholesaler or retailer of roasted coffee beans, nor are we a trader, which would be a company that speculatively purchases coffee from a different country, warehouses it in the United States, and then waits for a roaster to need coffee. They contact them, and maybe try samples. They receive samples and then they purchase. They call it a spot purchase, where they're buying the coffee at a fixed price plus a premium, call it a differential, based on the quality of the product, and of course where the market is at, which has been higher than it has been historically. But we like to invite businesses to look more into, their logistics and the supply chain of coffee, ultimately for the goal of improving the quality of the product, to have, more equitable and relational transactions when they're purchasing coffee, and we want all that to translate to the consumer.
Very cool, man. Well, I want to dive into some fun stuff because I just think coffee is fun in general. But um, one more quick question before we do that. So, most of your work and your team's work, are you what? I mean, how can you? I don't know if you want to do sliders or percentages or boxes or whatever. But are you more on the robotic side? Are you more on the barista side? Are you more on science? I mean, where do y'all kind of take a lot of pride in?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. We definitely have a good mix. We have, our team, we have people that are more technical. We have people that are more consultative or business focused. And then, everything in between. What we really like to consider ourselves is someone that comes alongside business owners and does provide that technical expertise to help coffee businesses level up their game, however it looks like. So we have to stay on top of our craft. Barista skills are a whole thing. We just all watched the World Barista Championships that was happening in
Oh,
Milan this
nice.
year.
Hell yeah.
And that has totally, changed over the last decade of being something that, has been very just within our internal community, with a small viewership to something that's growing and expanding, and you're seeing more of these really high level presentations filtering down to cafe experiences, or private catering experiences or pop up experiences, and so that's something really exciting. So we want to invite people into that world, and so it looks a lot of different ways, depending on the business's goals, and not everybody can do everything, but businesses have a lot of different avenues, a lot of different lanes where they can, draw inspiration from the specialty coffee industry, and apply it in their business, and stop, in some cases looking at coffee as like an amenity of something that's a non-revenue driver to something that actually is a revenue category and something that's propelling the business, propelling even like the storytelling of the business. And I think, one of the biggest things is, getting your people involved, and something that, that your staff, your team, your community can all get behind and actually enjoy. And you come together, you have a cup of coffee, and you have great interactions. You have great conversations. Great ideas come forth. All the good stuff.
That's crazy, man. You say that you can't do everything, but I don't know, man. After 3 cups of coffee, I feel like I can do it all. I can make it, serve it, dream it, plan it. It's definitely a motivator. It always trips me out. I like to think back on the history of some of how this started, but coffee being one of the largest commodities, and kind of how the origins stem centuries back, is always intriguing to me, and how a product that can be so old, and stand the test of time, can still have so much momentum today, right? Because the coffee segment just continues to boom now with so much technology involved. At least from my perspective, from a franchisee perspective, I've continued to see the segment get way, not saturated, but I mean saturated, competitive, all the above. But it's cool, man, because it seems like there's definitely still an affinity for the product, and I'm imagining that it has to be competitive and remain relevant, because there's so much, in my, again, this is just me thinking, but so much intrusion on the space with so many of these new energy drinks and so many new forms of energy, and everyone using different marketing tactics. And so that's always intriguing to me, because coffee always still holds like a, I don't know, man, it's classy, it's great, it's traditional, and I feel different when I'm drinking a cup of coffee or an espresso than when I'm drinking, some of these canned energy drinks, right? And I always find that intriguing, but definitely a commodity that I think is going to continue to be perfected and be admired for years to come. But speaking about some of that market saturation and that competition, what do the conversations sound like around the table when it comes to different forms of energy that aren't coming from a coffee bean?
Yeah. No, those are all really interesting points, and we can touch on coffee in terms of its trajectory too, because I think that's really important. You mentioned something really, really incredible, which is that why is it that coffee seemingly has so much momentum, while it seems like there's coffee everywhere. You're like, do people really have this much need for coffee? And so, one thing that coffee does often, people in coffee, we compare ourselves to the wine industry and specialty coffee in terms of understanding the product of what coffee is. Because most people, they can wrap their head around, maybe you go to a fine dining restaurant and there's a sommelier and they explain all of the differences of the varietals of the grapes, the tasting notes that you might get, and then also the price premium, this idea that there's this incredible range of price. And so when we compare ourselves to the wine industry, what a lot of people don't understand is we're actually in a much younger stage of market development compared to wine. The wine market is much more mature, and actually is embedded in just society and culture for a much longer period of time than specialty coffee has been as a product, which is not just the cup of joe that you buy pre-ground at the grocery store, but it's actually this unique product with its own identity. And then it comes from a beautiful faraway land. But then even by the time it gets to your cup, if you carefully prepare it, if you really give attention in the brewing, you can experience all of these really interesting things. And there's an intrinsic value that is actually subjective, just like wine, where there's no calculation you can do of like, okay, a $500 bottle of wine needs this much of this component and this much of that component. It's just something that someone has assigned that value to, based on its scarcity, based on the experience that it provides. And so coffee in the same way has a lot of momentum in that that transition to being just considered a commodity to being considered an experience. And the Specialty Coffee Association, which does a lot of the national and international level community building, and sets definitions and things like that, for our industry, they have slightly modified the definition of specialty coffee to include something that is an experience. And so we see that shift of coffee is no longer just a caffeine hit that you go to the convenience store in the refrigerated section and pop open an energy drink and drink it, and there's still coffee beverages in that aisle as well. But specialty coffee is different in that it's an experience, and it's something that is still new to a lot of people. So for businesses that want to invest in that, and join in that wave, there's a lot of time and there's a lot of open space.
I like the way you explain that, because not only do you enrich the history and the overall experience, which is obviously great selling points and keeps that tradition alive, but you also are, it seems like you're pretty practical about the product, right? Because you talked about the caffeine hit, and I don't know, man. I just think I'm very practical in nature, and I feel like I'm more likely to spend money on something that's going to make me feel one way or the other, right? So if it's a glass of wine, it's going to chill me out a little bit. I'm going to enjoy it. I get the history, I get, the flavors, etc. But at the end of the day, we're all chasing something, I feel like, man. So with caffeine, it still provides a little extra something, in your terms, caffeine hit, and I'm pretty practical in that sense that I don't think that's going away, right? And so if you can tie exactly what you're talking about and tell that story, and pair it with a good product, then why should it lose momentum? That's interesting. So the technology boom, I'm seeing more of it. I mean, I'm checking out fully robotic food trucks now. There's fully robotic restaurants. I have my take, and I can certainly share that. But I want to hear, y'all's perspective on it, and is there a line with robotics, and where's that line drawn within coffee? Because I think that there's a lot that helps the overall experience, and then I would argue that there's some that kind of takes away from the experience, right? I mean, you talk about like a French press, or you talk about, kind of your natural pour or your cold drip. And so can you kind of just talk a little bit about the technology aspect and how much of that is improving the experience, and is there a line that y'all kind of talk about where it takes away from the overall experience?
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the big things that's changing in the industry is the technology side. Um, I remember when I was starting my coffee journey, I got one of I can't even remember the name of the model, but I picked up this automatic pour over maker. And I was on this journey. I was like, my coffee should taste better. People always talk about it. I want to see if I can make that happen. So I got this thing, and it was this really clanky machine, and it would wind up and just make this horrible noise. And it was like, sounded like a jet engine when the boiler turned on, and it would crank around, and make my coffee in the morning. And so, things have changed now, where we have more sophisticated brewing technology and also roasters. So coffee in itself is really, it can be a very finicky process based passion or hobby, or business, in terms of getting the right roast profile, getting the right extraction. And it was also something that, outside of cultures that actually produce the coffee and work with it on a daily basis, there wasn't as much knowledge in, at least the United States as a consuming country, in terms of, all of the potential quality that's available in coffee. And so, we've seen the industry, it's still kind of in this process, but it's starting to transition from this kind of like eclectic knowledge that's passed down from a roast master to the next generation. And you have to spend 10 years, on this old, drum rotisserie machine, that was designed in the 1920s, to something that's more technology forward, where we're actually lowering that barrier of entry. And same on the brewing side. We want to bring in brewing technology, whether it's, pour over automation, or even like espresso and milk steaming based automation for like cafes. Um, and we want to take that and make it not only easier to get great results, but also alleviate some of that pressure on business owners to really have a proficiency in these subject matter of roasting, of brewing. And so the Stronghold machine is one of those roasters that somebody can take without a background in roasting knowledge and begin that journey, and get rewarded for the time that they put in, but also not to get punished for their lack of experience.
Yeah, I always I think of, for some reason, I just think of our Western culture, and I'm just thinking like, people want it fast, people want it now, they want their caffeine hit, they want to get to the next thing, and it's, I don't know, man. It seems like if I was in your shoes, it would be kind of purposeful to think of like, hey, how can we make this 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes of your day extra special, right? And like try to find and revert some of that exaggerated Western culture that we bump into sometimes. That's interesting. So going back to the question about the line and where it's drawn. I mean, are you seeing, because some of these roasters, like there's a lot going on in the machine, right? And how much of that is exposed to, per se, the person buying the cup of coffee across the counter, to to an encapsulated machine? And do y'all talk about those different, because you see like some of those baristas and the coffee experience where it's in like beakers and the glass, and you can see the drips and stuff. And so like how much of that is part of the conversation, and how do these machines start to address the improvements, but also not get too far off of the overall experience?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally. Speed, efficiency, consistency. Those things are so important for US consumers in the coffee space. Whether you're like a really, kind of corner, nook cafe, neighborhood coffee shop where people can spend more time, or if it's like a drive-through application, people still want the service to be high level. They want to come in on multiple visits and get the same level of experience. And so like, where do we draw the line is a good question. And I think everyone can relate to this of when you've had a coffee, and you get it and the espresso was extracted and the milk was steamed, and you drink it and you're just like, oh man, there is something wrong with this coffee.
Yeah.
So everybody knows what it's like when the coffee extraction didn't go well, or maybe it was an issue with the roasting. Maybe it was actually an issue with the coffee as it was produced, or processed. And the quality of the raw product actually, wasn't there, wasn't conducive to, those experiences that consumers want. And consumers are always learning. We're smart buyers in the US. We want value, and we want to make sure that we're making the most out of our time. For a lot of people, they're choosing to go to a cafe on a weekend, or maybe skipping out of the office for an hour or two to catch up with somebody. And so they need the caffeine hit. It's like that might be in your category where it's like, hey, I need to get the caffeine hit because I got a million things to do and I got to get there. So we don't want to pull away from the need of the consumers in specialty coffee. I think that we've kind of, as an industry, started to find that point of balance where we're coming back to a consumer focused experience, trying to bring as much and pull as much quality out. But we've all been there as coffee people where we order a pour over at a coffee shop, and maybe it's busy, maybe it's not, but we wait 15, 20 minutes to get the cup of coffee. And then even as people that have a deep appreciation for the art of coffee making, we still think to ourselves, man, I think it just doesn't feel right. It feels a little too long to wait for a cup of Joe.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the consistency and the quality is such a big part of that experience. So I'm sure y'all are, I mean, it sounds like, and what we saw at TRA, y'all are making tremendous strides in that regard with consistency and quality. Very cool, man. Very cool. Well, where you kind of touched on, your first experience with coffee, but what's your story, man? Where did this get started, and how did you cross into the coffee world?
Yeah, I always tell people I would wake up in the morning, with a notepad and a pencil and a cup of coffee. It's like, okay, what am I going to do with my life? And I'm sitting there sipping the coffee. I'm like, what? I need some ideas. And I sip the coffee. I'm like, yeah, it's a really good coffee. And then before you know it, I forget about the notepad. I just think about the coffee. And so here we are today. But my story was that I was working in corporate America, was doing, just what a lot of, college grads do is just, trying to break in the career, gain some experience, learn how business works, and quickly realize that, that I wanted to do something that made me feel more connected, to the world, something that was tactile, that I could feel with my hands, that I could touch, that I could taste, that I could smell. And I was also really interested in travel. It's interested in this world, outside the city limits, across borders. And so, what I saw in coffee was an industry where you could, experience and learn about all these things, about business, about international trade, but there is also a really strong community aspect to it. There's a lightheartedness to coffee. It doesn't feel so corporate and it doesn't feel so serious. Even at that, at the high levels when you do start to scale and grow as a business, but it's something that everyone intrinsically can enjoy. And it's something that people can get excited about. So, my kind of break into the industry happened at the end of this, couple year period where I wanted to find out if coffee could actually taste good. And then, all of a sudden I find myself at a table of coffees with someone called a Q instructor, who basically is, he's the teacher's teacher. He's the person that, will, kind of do a knowledge transfer to, career professionals that are in the coffee industry, and really, create a system of understanding coffee to differentiate quality, and to describe that quality, for people like a green coffee buyer, or maybe like a head roaster at a company, maybe a business owner that is adjacent to something like a sommelier. Although the requirements aren't nearly as high. I mean, a lot of people make that parallel. But I end up here at this table and tasting a blueberry note in a coffee. And I'm like, this coffee tastes fruity. And then this one tasted chocolatey. And then another one was like, this is kind of weird. It tastes, there's like some, seed likeness to it, or, there's savoriness to it. And so I realized there were all these flavors in coffee. And there's something alluring about this, kind of black beverage, where it, on the surface, you taste the first sip and there's kind of a bitterness. There's, it's not very sweet. It's just, it seems like a blank canvas. And then you kind of take another sip, you slow down, and you start to experience all of these other aspects about the coffee. And so, kind of hit the ground running and never look back. And, so that was 5 years ago.
Dude, that's awesome. We have to turn that into an ad. A black luring liquid.
Yeah.
Alluring liquid. That's awesome, man. Very cool. You touched on something that's kind of interesting, and something that I'm certainly not pretentious about, but it reminds me of when I first got started in the franchise world. And you kind of touched on the culture, the overall culture of the industry, and what type of people you kind of come across, and the casualness. And I think that's really cool, because I feel the same way about the restaurant industry. I mean, I can remember, man, 15 years ago running around. I'm a franchisee, right? And I'm a business owner, and I was in a suit and I was in a jacket. And then, dude, the work just started to pile on. And it was just like a lot of hard work with very normal, good people, like everyday people. And I was one of those people. And then I just realized, like, what the hell? And I'm going to get so much shit from my friends about this, but I'm like, what the hell am I doing wearing a suit? Like, like, what am I, like, yes, I'm a business owner. Yes, we have franchises, multiple locations, etc. But I love the idea that the restaurant industry's, dude, it's pretty basic at the end of the day. We're serving food, and we're doing something that I like to think is purposeful and honorable. And so, needless to say, it's been a little while that I wear a suit to work or a jacket to work. But if I go to events and stuff, maybe. But that's cool that the coffee world kind of shares some of that casual culture. Let's dumb some of this down a little bit, Drew, for the everyday person. But I think I have like I don't know. I think it's like a Ninja, maybe a Ninja coffee machine, maybe $60 or something. $80. It does pretty well. Last time we went to the grocery store, I think we bought like 5 different bags. We were like, let's try a bunch of them. I personally know nothing about the coffee that I like, but I do buy this one called Blue Bottle coffee. Maybe, I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yep.
Blue Bottle.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I do like that. I know I like it, but I can't tell you where it's from. I can't tell you anything else about it.
Yep.
And so we come back with those 5 bags. I also know that I like coffee beans, and it takes me a little bit more time, but really not much more time, just to grind those beans up in this like little bitty, like, just like machine that you like press down, right, and then you just throw it in the coffee machine. So I know what I like, but I really don't know what it is that I'm drinking. So to dumb this down to the everyday consumer, what might something like my whatever machine I have in the price range that I have to some of y'all's roasters, what's going to be the main difference? Is it the consistency? Is it the extraction? Is it the heating process? All the above. Besides the common, well, our roasters can make 7 different cups of coffee, right? Different types.
Sure.
Because I know that is nice to have, right? We have that at the office and stuff, but you know what I mean. So what's the biggest difference that y'all see?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the home consumer market where people are making that first cup of coffee to get out of the house and start their day is so important because those are your precious moments that you have to yourself. And for a lot of people, that's the only moments they have, for themselves, where they can slow down, start to wake up, and drink and enjoy their coffee. So what specialty coffee companies do is, we place a premium on that time and that experience. And so if we're going to, take those moments for ourselves, why not make those moments as enjoyable as possible and maximize it? So, one of the first things that we always recommend as coffee people is to, as you mentioned, grind the coffee fresh. There's an important reason for that is that coffee will oxidize. And coffee, after it's roasted, is very sensitive to losing its flavor and its aroma. And you can taste a difference, and it can be very flat. When you grind the coffee fresh, you're really setting yourself up for the best possible experience of that coffee. And so that's always the first thing we recommend. A quality grinder is going to give you uniform consistency in how you actually like break up those pieces or those particles of coffee that you're going to be extracting. So when you have all of those little pieces of coffee around the same size, what's going to happen is the hot water is going to pull out all of those. We call them solubles. They dissolve into the liquid. It's going to happen at the same rate. What happens if you have really big, we call them boulders in the coffee industry, and then you have fines or really tiny particles or like, coffee dust, is that you're going to get really bitter, sour extraction of that coffee. And so you're not going to get that even rate of dissolving the solubles into the liquid beverage. So, that's one of the best ways that you can invest is actually the grinder, not the brewer. Connecting that to the roasting process, I consider roasting to be a business activity. I think that's starting to change where there's a few enthusiasts or hobbyists that are in, home roasting, which I kind of view as a different thing than business roasting or commercial roasting. Because as a business owner, our goal is, we need to balance the books. We need to make money. There's people relying on us for a living. So, as far as why someone would invest in a higher quality roaster is to set up that experience kind of for their consumers. And so, roasting is something that is very precise. It's this kind of dance of heat and time. And the coffee needs to go along that track in just the right way. And every coffee needs to go on a little bit of a different journey to that end point to maximize it. And so coffee isn't just one thing. There's a huge range of diversity in the types of seeds. And it's just like, any other collectible where, you get to experience one for the first time and, hey, maybe you love it, but it's kind of fun for a lot of people to discover those differences of like, oh, hey, this is a coffee from Ethiopia. It's very tea-like, and it's super clean, but I'm getting lemongrass, or I'm getting citrus from this coffee. Or then maybe you go over to Central America and you're like, oh, it's so syrupy. I taste the brown sugar in it, and it just is cozy. Or Brazil, and you get the nuttiness and the chocolatiness, and people love that. And so you kind of can get this diversity of different experiences in coffee, but all of that really requires kind of that next level of attention. And so we want more consumers to experience and enjoy that, or at the very least have like a nice balanced cup of coffee, so that it tastes good, gets the job done, and most importantly, it doesn't have that icky feeling when coffee is not extracted properly, where it kind of churns your stomach, or it just feels weird on the palate. And so those are the different kind of ways people can look at their their daily cup of coffee in the morning.
See, this is why we do this, because we meet smart people like this and know what they're actually talking about. I love this, Drew. So I'll tell you my experience, because it really does happen. And I know instinctively that there's something wrong, but I just don't know how to improve it, right? And I know we're talking about the roasters and the restaurant industry, but just on my personal experience, I have this little machine, right? And it like grinds the coffee beans, and I can see that the little blade or whatever is trapping a lot of that product underneath the blade, and it pisses me off, because they just like stay down there, and I'm like, how do you get it like to come back up? And then the ones that are coming in don't funnel all the way down. So when I finish it and I look, I know instinctively, like, this shit doesn't look even. Like, it's not, it's not, there's something wrong with it, right? But I'm like, all right, we'll just push it a couple more times and then get the cup of coffee out. So it works for me, but I do think about that, and the way you explained it makes perfect sense. That a more even grain, or whatever you want to call it, is definitely going to create a better end product. Interesting, man. Very interesting. What would you say? No wrong answers here, but what would you say the average person should spend on a coffee machine at their house?
Oh, that's a great question. I would get in trouble if any coffee person saw this and I didn't first say, invest first in increasing your spend on the bag of coffee you're purchasing. And so I know you're already buying Blue Bottle, and so that's a really well-known, they're kind of one of the trailblazers in specialty coffee from the Bay Area, and now they are a huge company, kind of like one of those really incredible success stories in coffee. But we can also talk about, the spice grinder of kind of, we can MacGyver it a little bit while you're using that one, and get a good result out of it. But aside from purchasing, good coffee that has a roast state, so just like coffee will oxidize over time, we really want to consume coffee around 30 days of when it was roasted. You can stretch out a little further as needed, but just know that for most coffees, that's gonna be the sweet spot. There's some like really niche types of roasting techniques that might change those timing intervals. The darker the coffee's roasted, the quicker you really want to consume the coffee. The lighter the coffee's roasted, those can actually benefit from like a resting or waiting period. But all that to say, most of the coffee in the market, if you use the 30-day rule, you're going to be good to go for the vast majority of coffees. And then after that, you have your coffee, say it was roasted 7 days ago. That's a good time. Okay, grab it off the shelf. And now you kind of want to think about the grinding of the coffee. Invest in something that's going to do an even grind. There's really good grinders you can get, for around $100. And then, after that, then you can start looking at the brewing. But, I've had great coffees out of a Mr. Coffee, that we kind of looked at it, and said, hey, realistically, we're going to have people that have, the $15, $20 coffee maker at home. Is it possible to get a good coffee out of this? And I think you can. But what ends up happening is people, kind of land somewhere along the lines. Some people want espresso, for example, And so there's, a very mature market of home segment espresso machines that are available and intended just to make one cup of coffee really good in a cafe style beverage. I would steer away from, anything that's going to be pre-ground, and really go for the fresh roasted coffee if you're wanting to have that experience. People are always going to go for the convenience, not knocking people that want to do the pods, or the pre-ground, but those are ways you can, increase the quality of the coffee. But I would say the brewer is almost that last, step where you start looking at things like, the pouring technique, the extraction, the temperature of the water, which brings me to the last thing, and this is usually where you lose people. So here we go, is the water is actually really important to how you brew the coffee. It's 99% of the liquid beverage. It really needs to be in this kind of narrow bandwidth of total dissolved solids, mineral content. If you have, distilled water, it's going to be a little nasty. If you have really hard water, it's going to be pretty nasty. It needs to be in a tighter range. And so for most people, like spring water, in the form of bottled water, or if they have some type of filtration. I used to live in, Oregon, the Pacific Northwest, and we have the Cascade Range and all of the miracle water that just flows down from the mountains. So our water was actually pretty good out there. But I know that's not the case for most people. I live in Houston now. Definitely don't brew with the tap. You want to get a filtered water. For coffee at least, if you're not also filtering your drinking water.
This is my mineral heavy coffee I'm serving you.
Yeah.
That's interesting, man. I on the water, for me, I don't know why, I'm just a logical person, and it means it's like a no brainer for me. So usually it ends up coming out of my filtered water system, but nonetheless, that makes perfect sense. Well, that's crazy, man. So would you judge me like if I spent like freaking $100 on $200 on this specialty coffee bean, grounded up everything, but then it's going through a Mr. Coffee?
No judgment.
Credit,
No judgment.
right?
I would say, if anything, that's kind of kudos that, that you trusted a roaster, you found someone that you really thought they could, deliver on a really nice coffee that's worth that experience. At a certain price point, it makes sense, I think, to do it in a way that would be proficient based on specialty coffee standards. I think really that, that $15 and up bag of coffee really starts to differentiate itself. And I think the average for specialty coffees, if you're to pick it up at an independent shop, it's going to hover around like $20 currently. And it's going even higher. The nicer the coffee, the higher it goes. So it's not uncommon at all to see $25, $30 bags of coffee now in a lot of the independent specialty coffee shops. And so I would just say that, you want to find something that you enjoy intrinsically in the process. Whether it's the hobby and trying to level up your game, or whether it's, very utilitarian. I want to enjoy, the coffee, make sure I get a decent, value point. So I think for a lot of people, that value point ends up being at, find your local coffee roaster to support. Ask the barista, or better, ask the roaster a few questions about the types of coffees they have. If you can attend a cupping, where was the event that I was talking about, that I got to go and actually taste all these different types of coffee, and you hear people talk about the differences, and you can kind of, get to engage in it, and get to speak the language that industry people use. And I think that Mr. Coffee can deliver. Not everybody's going to have their home pour over set up with a $200 pour over kettle that's, set on a timer in the morning like me. But I just can't do it any other way, because as in a lot of things, in kind of the finer things of life, once you have the really good, stuff, it's hard to go back down. So that's the caveat. Yeah. That's the word of warning I give you as you go down the path, of diving into coffee. You'll become a coffee snob to your friends, and they won't be able to deal with you and your, special process for how you make your coffee.
Well, I don't know if I'll ever get there, but I certainly lean into things that I do like, and I like to try to understand them more. But some things, I just don't make the time to. But I do lean into my gut and say, hey, this is what I do like. Uh, Man, dude, my mom, dude, she used to buy these like big bags at like Costco. She's like obsessed with like just buying in bulk product because she has so many people at her home, and it's like this glorious experience. And my mom's awesome. But I always looked at those big bags of coffee and how long they would stay there. And I just thought like, man, that grounded coffee can't be that good after like 6 months, dude. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe it loses some of that flavor. But I did buy her, I forgot what brand it was, but I bought her. I don't think it was Blue Bottle or Blue Bottle. You think they're good people? I mean, I know it's a pretty decent product, but it's good company, like reputation.
It's now a large company. So we see a lot of these companies that started out locally, became regional, and now they are national retailers. So now you actually see them at the major national chain grocery stores, and you can get them. They're considered macro roastery now, so they do large volumes. They're at an industrial capacity. So it's just they have a different level of scale. And we've seen a lot of companies that were kind of in the early beginnings. We call it the third wave, where we went from coffee being like a commodity, just like the banana, where it comes over from a different country and it's sold at a standard price in volume. Then we went to the second wave of coffee, where we think of coffee as this potential product that can be part of a premium, or luxury lifestyle. So you think of your Starbucks drink where you have the foam and the fancy name and the caramel drizzle and all these things, and it's like, okay, well, they've added some value into this by bringing other things into the equation for the coffee, and also probably looking a little bit more at the quality of the coffee as well, not as a base, but they're curating, really they're selecting good coffee from different farms that meet that higher criteria of expectation. And so Blue Bottle is one of those third wave companies. And there's a lot of them now in different parts of the country, where local, passionate people really, did a deep dive, and they started introducing more people to that higher level coffee, where you're just thinking about the coffee itself, like maximizing the experience of the specialty coffee and respecting the coffee just as black coffee. And then out of all that, we have a lot of companies now that have achieved scale, which is an aspiration for a lot of business owners. They want to see that scale. And so a lot of people look up to, whether it's Starbucks or look up to Blue Bottle. There's a few other ones that have achieved really impressive scale in the US and a ton internationally. And so, I would always say go as local as you can. But it's always good to have the convenience of retailers. But if you can, always check out the local cafe, ask them if they roast. If they don't roast, ask them where they get their beans, and maybe they know a local source where you can not just support local, but you can also you can also potentially learn a little bit more about that process and kind of get your foot in the door, and they'll be really open to telling you about the quality, and they're going to be really invested in the quality of that experience for you.
Yeah, love the message, man. Love the overall approach. Kudos to you and your team for arming you with all this knowledge, and for yourself for diving deep into it. I don't necessarily want to touch on it right now, if that's all right, but I do. The thought that comes to mind, a very obvious thought, is the slowing of alcohol consumption and how that might have a positive impact on caffeine consumption, and how I think just us as humans, we look for something to do, maybe even in that evening time. And so if it's Friday, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, maybe I can go have a nice cup of coffee instead of just turning straight to that alcohol product. And I wonder what this younger generation, what habits they're building. But that's interesting to think about. Let's go back to the one real quick. Hey, whatever. I'll shout out Starbucks' snacks and egg bites. Oh, and their nitro cold brew because I like it. But God, dude, I think their hot coffee is just so bad. I don't know anything about it. I just do not like it. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's quality or not. It tastes bad to me. But I do buy their nitro cold brew and I do like it. But I like your message about shopping local. I think that's a powerful one. And I think it's really powerful because us as franchisees, I try to push that message a lot too and say, hey, look, I get that I operate national brands, but I'm a local individual that started right here in this community and serve my community. And so we always try to lean into that. And the average consumer doesn't see that some national brands have local ownership in the franchisee format, and then some of them are corporations, right? And so I do think that it's great that you're pushing that local message. So when you get to the everyday coffee shop, what are some of the obvious like pain points that you're seeing for them, like or mistakes that they're making?
Yeah. And hopefully there's an overlap too with kind of the areas where they can improve and what actually where their value system is, and how they're really wanting to format and configure their guest experience. But I think that, coffee is one of those things where there's a big range of experiences. You have some coffee that's really, it's more that like adding, milk and sugar. I think like Starbucks is a good example of a company that they're really, their focus isn't so much, I think, on you buying the drip. And maybe when you taste that drip, it leaves something to be desired, right? And you're like, okay, well, maybe I'm actually going to go towards one of their more premium products. And so I think they have pretty intelligent menu design where it kind of shifts you and moves you up in the experience and kind of away from the value meal into the $8 or $9 drink. But every business can kind of format their menu, format their experience, how they would like. I think there are different price points of the level of coffee that they're actually purchasing. In terms of acquisition, of selecting a crop that they're going to go in a roast, or if they're not a roaster, selecting a local business or a larger business to actually bring in the roasted coffee to serve for their guests. So there's some businesses that have really successful models, spending, a lot on their coffee. There's other businesses where they're, kind of purchasing more of a base product. But one thing I'll say is that the consumers pick up on that. Segmentation is something that consumers will know. You'll attract the type of customers and consumers, in your area for the product that you're putting out. And that's something that if you want to change it, you have to change it over time. If you go from, really traditional coffee, cafe to like a very highbrow elevated experience, some people might get frustrated. You may lose them along the way of all your talk about tasting notes and the price premiums that you're asking for. But businesses that invest in the quality and start that, what we're seeing time and time again is there's a huge demand for that. I think the biggest opportunities for coffee shops right now, bar none, is roasting your own beans. There is no reason, based on the economics of purchasing your supply, that you wouldn't be roasting in-house. People get intimidated by the knowledge barrier for roasting. The technology has totally changed that. I see time and time again businesses that come in without a background in roasting, or maybe sometimes they don't even have a huge interest in roasting, but still able to get a higher quality product at a lower cost when they bring that in-house. Talk about vertical integration. That's the number one opportunity people can do. I think the number two is just being more intentional about what coffee you're bringing in. If you were to purchase a piece of real estate or a fine, a piece of fine art, you would want a subject matter expert to look at that and actually give a fair market assessed value for that asset. Same with coffee. It's a really complex agricultural product, and there's a huge range of diversity. Why wouldn't you want an expert to help you kind of make that decision? There's a lot of those experts around. And I think it's one of the huge areas where you can buy smart, and then, present a product that you can then, share with your customers, that you were intentional, about that ingredient selection. You were intentional. You're connected to a story of where that coffee came from, and you're able to speak to its quality.
Dude, it's so crazy how much technology has started to change the landscape of so many industries and so many business. Um, it's um, it's very obvious to me that things are getting disrupted right now, and I like what you talked about, the knowledge barrier. I think that we can all make a better effort to just approach things with confidence, and sometimes things might be feasible when maybe we didn't see that right at the beginning. So that's interesting on the roasting process. Very cool, man. Starbucks, what a genius. Well, frankly, they're closing some units right now and restructuring some things, but what a genius model. Because you right when you said it, I cracked up because I'm like, that's so true. There's some coffee places where I don't like the cold brew coffee, but when you add a little bit of milk and sugar, then I'm like, oh, this is actually really good. But
Hmm.
I like to drink just nitro cold brew coffee or black coffee. But there's some black coffees I just don't like, and I'm just like, this doesn't taste good. But maybe, and this is coming from a person that doesn't know, but maybe that bitter taste, or maybe just that base black coffee might taste better once it's complemented with some milk and sugar, and I'm sure they think of some of that.
Yeah,
That's crazy how
absolutely.
you were talking about menu engineering, and they're so smart, man. They're really putting a lot of pressure. They put pressure on people like myself and others too, where they're going after individual day parts and snack, times, and there's so much of their product that now is really a treat. It's an indulging product, and I,
Hmm.
I haven't crossed that line. You will not see me go buy an 800 calorie drink, for $10 or whatever and sipping on it. When I do, or if it comes across like my desk somehow, it's super good.
Yeah.
But I just haven't crossed that barrier, and it's very surprising to me um that so many people do really enjoy a premium, caffeinated product like that, especially combined with sugar. Something about that still doesn't sit well with me personally,
Hmm.
frankly. But so Houston, Texas, man, are y'all seeing the coffee wars like we're seeing them down here in the valley? I mean, feels like there's a coffee shop or franchises and national brands that are popping up left and right. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, the gold rush, the
Yeah.
turf wars of coffee shops. I think you mentioned something really interesting about, people are looking for that place to connect. They're looking for the third space. And less and less people are going to bars, or they're doing after hours drinking. It's a more health conscious generation, we're finding out with Gen Z. And they value those experiences. So, I think that one thing that we've been able to do in Houston with our company here, and then also I think it's really just the character of the city and the character of the coffee community here, is we're actually really collaborative. Um, we cheer one another on. We regularly have events. Just yesterday, we had, a cupping of coffees that we're preparing for auction, a private auction. And so we had business owners and coffee buyers from, half a dozen different shops, all really specialty coffee shops, doing cool things. I think people in coffee, what we realize is that it's something where we all benefit collectively from learning from one another and collaborating from one another. I think it comes down to the mindset. But as with everything, the race to the bottom is always going to be like a tough thing, because then it really is, competing for a ubiquitous product. But our messaging is that coffee It doesn't have to be a ubiquitous product. And even if you're really more on that basic level, there's so many areas where you can add value and still provide something that's a cost saving segment for the market, a value segment for the market. But there's so many areas with your expertise and the value that you can add to really deliver something that's competitive in the marketplace. And we see so much room for hustle and craft in this industry, and people are going to find it if you invest in that quality.
I will say this, and I think I'm quoting this correctly, so you're gonna have to fact check me. But I think it was the CEO of Dutch Bros. I believe it's I forget her name, but she talks so much about having fun in their units, and how the staff how they aim to create a fun environment. And I think that's something that our listeners and viewers can take away for whether you're an independent shop or whether you're a national brand. That don't forget about how much value there is in your team just having fun. I mean, I think that that's just contagious, and I think it spreads, and it sounds like y'all are certainly having some fun. So very cool. How much of your product or your roasters are going towards independent, and y'all have the capability to service bigger brands, and
Yeah.
are y'all taking that on, or are you staying more at an independent level?
Yeah, that's a great question. As our business grows, we are looking to really service national accounts. We have a national sales territory, and there is a desire for larger coffee operations at scale to continue to compete effectively with smaller independent shops that can just put so much passion and localized effort into creating a great experience. And these businesses want to compete. We see Starbucks, like starting to show signs of slowing down. And so I think the model is changing. So I think larger companies still want to serve small, whether they do that effectively through a franchise model, like you mentioned, where actually the ownership is local, it is community based, or if it's using techniques such as like decentralizing, where you still operate as a modular office, where maybe you have unique coffees for that particular community in that locale, that city or that state, because the trends do vary from place to place.
100%.
So we do want to service. We want to increase the quality of coffee for all businesses. Our machines and equipment are intended to support cafes or roasteries at a certain size. We have all electric roasters, and so we have one of the larger capacity machines. The electricity that's used means that the batches aren't going to be something where you distribute nationally on a single machine, but we are seeing modular adoption for the roasting. And I think the technology also adds brand consistency on things like the brewing equipment. We have super automatic espresso machines where you're getting the barrier of proficiency lowered for milk steaming and espresso extraction, as well as automated pour over systems where we're adding consistency and uniformity. Everything is going to be different city to city. The water is so different, elevations are so different, and so even in something like coffee, where those things matter a lot, we do have applications that that I think add a lot of value for larger businesses. Of course, small independent businesses are not left behind. They're kind of at the front and center of what we do. We love turning coffee shops into cafe roasteries, where they're roasting their own beans, where they're adding value for their consumers. We think that roasting is something that can be done by more people, and even for consumers to have more visibility of what that looks like.
That's powerful, man. Yeah, the way you said that last part is really powerful, because I think that I'm sure y'all come across, and I'm not trying to be cliche here, but you could probably strike a deeper passion within somebody's business, right? And so just the sheer awareness that you're bringing to this conversation, I'm sure that y'all bring in a business setting as well, is pretty cool for local cafes. What a crazy world, man. What a crazy world, coffee. There's so much. All right. So I've got a couple things written down here. I don't even know if they make sense. I think they do, but wanted to try to do a little um, drink A or drink B. And if you'll entertain this, just whatever Drew wants, right? So I'm going to say two things, and you pick one of the two things, okay? And if you don't know, just pass, all right?
Okay. All right, you got it.
Starbucks cold brew or Dunkin' cold brew?
Ooh, that's good. So I'm not an East Coaster, so Dunkin's at a little bit of a disadvantage. I'm gonna go with Starbucks cold brew.
Nitro from Dutch Bros or an espresso shot from your local cafe?
That's a loaded question. You didn't realize it, but that's tough. One of the pain points is how how seemingly rare it is for a really good espresso extraction. It totally depends on the cafe. I'm here in Houston, and there's several businesses that that are do a really good job, train their baristas, and have great service. So I'm going for the local cafe, although I am going to be a little selective, and make sure that I'm doing the right thing. There's a trust building process usually that I'll do with new coffee shops, and then kind of work my way down to the distilled coffee beverage, the pure form, the espresso, which can be dangerous if done incorrectly.
Heard. Matcha latte or chai latte?
Ooh, that's tough. I'm actually I enjoy matcha. I think that matcha is great. Chai, a hot chai, I think on a cold day is really special too. I'm split 50-50. I probably drink more matcha, but they're both special and have their place.
Instant coffee or robot made coffee?
Oh, okay. I got to shout out. We have customers and colleagues that are in the Seattle area and kind of spearheading the robot arm coffee. And so I'm gonna have to go with robot coffee. It can be good. It's controversial as heck. But technically the workflows can be automated in a robot. If it's a good engineer and a good coffee person behind it, can be great. So I'm going robot.
Very cool. And lastly, Drew's go-to coffee. What does that sound like?
Ooh, yeah. So that's a good question. We drink a lot of pour overs here at the office, at home, and amongst peers. So I'm definitely going pour over for the extraction style. I'm gonna take a careful look at the paper filter we're using too. I'm a V60 guy, so yeah. So the dripper that I use, it's called the V60. It's kind of the industry standard, 60 degrees is the angle of the cone. And then for coffee, it would. I'm tempted just to say what is the most well-known and highly regarded coffee, which is Panama Geisha, which is the same coffee that sets the auction records. The most recently passed $30,000 per kilo of unroasted coffee, and so mind you, it's going to lose around 15% of moisture content, and so I would say that coffee from Panama, specifically of the geisha variety or strain, is not a daily drinker for most people. My probably go-to, my first origin trip was in Guatemala, and I love the range and diversity of coffees you can get from Guatemala. So I'll say that for my daily driver, a high elevation coffee in Guatemala, probably a wash, but could be a natural. That's my go-to.
Sounds good, man. We can't go to a restaurant together, bro. We'll take an hour to order, you and me. It's just like I order the thing, I'm thinking, I'm looking, I'm like, what do I want? What do I like? What do I? And then I finally make a decision. But it's really fun. I love this, man. It's been fun, and I like talking about it. So very cool. What's next for Roastronics and the team?
Yeah, absolutely. We're growing, we're expanding. Um, we support and are really involved in roasting competition space. In the international community, we get involved in the auctions, and everything that's related to innovation and quality in coffee. As we grow, we're looking to expand our team. So we're growing, bringing on passionate people, both on the sales and operations side. And we don't have any big news that I'm kind of like bringing out on the pod. But I can say that we're really excited about the product segment of the automated brewing systems, of our cafe roastery program, where we're actually taking people a lot of times on like a 1-year track. And the first thing is just find the right coffees, the right profiles. You mentioned something really astute, actually, was that, hey, this coffee tastes like it wants milk added to it. So we find those roast profiles where you do roast coffee to a point where it's going to cut through the milk, or something that's going to be more as a purist experience, just intended it to be drank black, plain. And so, for us, we love turning, more coffee wholesale purchasers to coffee roasters. And then, up in the game, leveling up however we can, whether on the business side, on the coffee side, the science side, whatever comes up. We want to come alongside business owners, support them. And so we're doing that at larger scale, all across the US.
Very cool. It's y'all are on, y'all are deep into coffee for sure. It's very nerdy and very admirable. It's cool.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. How was TRA for y'all?
Oh, that was fun. That was our breakout experience. We were the only. I couldn't believe it, because we go to all the trade shows for the actual coffee industry. So breaking out into the restaurant space, number one, what a fun group of people.
Yeah.
We had such a blast. And then number two, I don't actually want to disclose this on the pod, but I'll give it to y'all for just the value add, and to appreciate you for your work, is that we're the only people making espresso. And I think most of the place, there were a few other places doing cafe beverages, but we were roasting live on site at the booth, using our smaller machine. So people are seeing the roasting process. They're seeing the actual extraction, our super automatic espresso machine, pulling shots, steaming milk. We had the fortune of being adjacent to a dairy company, and so we were just pulling jugs of milk out of their fridge, and then putting it right into making lattes. And so it was a ton of fun brewing coffees, and so we loved every second of it.
That's awesome. I feel compelled to say thanks, but I mean, TRA has done such a great job. We're leaning forward more and more every year. We've been members for a long time, but I just think that it's a great bunch of people, and knowledgeable people that I think, and I'll just mention quickly, because I'm pretty passionate about this, but the advocacy that goes behind that, it rewards so many of us in the restaurant space, and not all of us contribute by being members, but it rewards all of us, right? And so I think that they definitely deserve, and we need to acknowledge that credit that goes that way. So I'm super happy y'all had a great time. We try to go when we can, but have been members for a long time. So that's great that it was a great avenue for y'all. Well, this has been awesome, Drew. Anything else you wanna shout out right now, or ask, or anything that we can close on?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just plug our company and our work. If you're interested in leveling up in the coffee game, we're not a one size fits all. We can always field calls, take appointments, and have a meeting, talk about a coffee program, talk about opportunities. There's a ton of opportunities in the coffee space. And so, that's what we do every day is we come alongside business owners that have dreams, have coffee ideas. A lot of them don't come from traditional coffee businesses. So, if you're, a coffee adjacent business, whether you have a community or whether you have like a retail space or whether, there's another industry that you're looking at, a coffee service or adding coffee as a vertical into your system, we'd love to talk about that. There's ways we've seen people be really successful, and we love sharing that knowledge. So I'm happy to do that. You can find us at roastronics.com. You can also find us on Google listing, and we have our office number. And we love hearing coffee stories and other people's businesses and diving in.
The one thing that I thought about as I was hearing you talk about the competitions and stuff, and one I couldn't get past. I don't know why I can't get past it. It's literally called cupping. That's what it's called.
Yes, yeah. It's a strange term for people who haven't heard of it.
But for some reason, I can't get past that term. I just think of the cupping. Or
you think of the massage kind of parlor, and you have the bowls.
Just showing my ignorance here, but no. What I was thinking about, man, was how many times I go and have. Well, I don't know how y'all view this. Maybe this is like not a good thing in your world, but those damn espresso martinis are pretty good. And when people make those well, they're really good. But what I see time and time again, which is surprising to me because most of them get served in a restaurant setting, that they can't make the espresso or they don't, they just have a pre-made mix or they have like a little cold brew out of a container. And I just think that's an easy win. It's such a fun drink. I think a lot of people are really enjoying espresso martinis. But I can't tell you how many times, and I'm going to go as high as saying probably 8 out of 10 don't meet the expectation. And that can, and I think a lot of it is because they're probably throwing some instant coffee together or doing something just to get that out, Right. And so I don't know if that there's any room for that in your world, but that's just one point of feedback that I've experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an amazing, I think I've looked at some surveys where it's like the number 3 a sold item, like at bars. So it's really surprising how popular espresso martini is, and 80% sounds good. That's something similar to I feel like what I experience if I just order the shot of espresso, in a shop. If you just, throw a dart at a map and go to the nearest coffee shop. But definitely, I mean, really, we want to fill in the gap of, bringing deep coffee knowledge for businesses in order for them to apply it in their model. So espresso extraction, these types of things, they're not impossible. I wouldn't even say they're hard, but they do require learning. They require the right equipment and the right techniques, and the right training to get everything up to speed. So that they can have that, that being that 20%, those are good odds. So, we want more people to deliver on that. Espresso martinis are super interesting. I think that for the most part, a super automatic is a really good application for a bar. That way you don't have to maintain the traditional barista training, that a cafe would need to maintain. If the bar isn't open for day hours. But we're also seeing a lot of conversions where they actually want to be open during day hours, and they'll transition from coffee beverages dominant, to a bar in the evening. So there's a lot of different, I think, lanes where people can find espresso martini, really good espresso extraction.
Well said. What last question, because selfishly I want to know, but one, have you seen those little rock candies that they do with espressos? Like it's like the stick with like the rock candy. Have you ever seen that or no?
I have seen different types of, I don't know what you would call that.
It's like a stick with like garnish, this, like raw. Yeah. Like a sugar garnish or something.
Yeah, you garnish it with, so we see gummy bears are really common. Like the gold, we have a shop in town, Un Cafe. Soon's a friend of ours, and he's got his gummy bear cold brew, that he'll put in his coffee drinks. But there's a ton of different stuff you can put. A lot of them kind of start to go into like the dessert, coffee beverage, avenue.
Well, my question was this. Sorry, real quick, but my question is what it with an espresso particularly, because I personally love espressos, but what are you putting in as far as a sweet element, and what do you recommend?
Yeah, it's a great question. One thing to keep in mind is that milk is pretty sweet already. So sometimes if you want to add another element, you can use a sweetened element such as a sugar, but I would look at the balance of the beverage based on what the coffee is, what types of notes are coming out from the coffee, and you can actually modulate those flavor expressions and do something that's really cool. This is an element of the World Barista Championship, is creating a specialty drink where you're adding these other ingredients. A lot of times they are a syrup or something that's sweetened, that just adds that new dimension, and a little goes a long way. Something that's really sugary is going to overpower it. But you can use, certain things like florals, like lavender is a super popular one. Syrups are something that it's really easy actually to make in-house. You can make a reduction in a syrup and have that be like a house-made ingredient. Or if it's more practical for you to purchase syrups, depends on your business. But you can always do one specialty drink that really brings out the attributes of the coffee that's on your menu, something that's interesting. Right now we're in, pumpkin spice season, so how that goes. It's, you add in the pumpkin and make that really cozy, tasting latte, probably with cinnamon or mulling spices flavor. And, and people eat that up. They love it. And, I won't knock it. I'm not a big pumpkin spice guy, but there's always new things, different flavors. So the sky is the limit.
So many fun directions. You mentioned the simple syrups. I'm surprised by how many people purchase simple syrup when it's such an easy thing to make, or syrups in general, and then you can get so much good flavor out of it. Man, dude, this has been so great. Life Currency Podcast has taken a lot of taken us in so many different directions, but I just love that through your work, you're sharing a lot of life currency with cafes and business owners and restaurateurs through your work. And it's like a natural, you can just see it and hear it and feel it, that it's just a natural fit for y'all's group to share and bring awareness. And so kudos to y'all on that. That's certainly what we're trying to do here on the pod as well, is just be able to bring practical advice to people in the restaurant space. So thanks for doing that today in a large way. I certainly learned a lot, man, and I just want to thank you again for the support and for coming on. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bob. This has been amazing, super fun, and keep up the good work with the pod. I mean, it's great stuff, and there's so much value for business owners. We don't always feel connected in community, so I get so much value from it, and I know there's a community that supports it. So thank you.
Cool, man. We'll keep in touch. Thanks a bunch.
Alrighty. Okay. Take care.
All right.
Welcome to the Life Currency Podcast. I'm your host, Bob Lozano, a show that explores success, growth, and opportunity in the restaurant industry. A restaurant podcast by restaurant people, powered by F&P Media.